that
is that Derek Wilkins committed to Cal. And we saw that, the D-line prospect. Stanford desperately needs D-line prospects. This is someone who's admitted to Stanford. And it used to be that if someone was admitted to Stanford, they were going. That was it. If they were committed, admitted, that was it. And then Derek Wilkins chooses California. That's absurd. Stanford can't let that happen under their nose. And he cited things like the fact that they're just simply recruiting California better right now, that he had more friends going to Cal. And that's something where Stanford is really struggling. Stanford does not recruit California well at all. And of course, there's a benefit to being a national powerhouse and recruiting all over the country. But if you can't get kids in your own backyard and they're going to Cal, who you just lost to in the big game, that's a tough dagger to take. And right now, Stanford isn't doing enough. And the other thing that he cited was that they weren't giving him enough face time. This is someone whose dream school was Stanford, dream school to go to Leland Stanford Junior University, and he didn't go to Stanford. Why? Because they didn't give him enough time. They didn't show him enough love. This is where this recruiting program has completely fallen apart at Stanford. Stanford just isn't doing enough to show these kids that they love them. And it's crazy right now what recruits want. They want their name on Instagram. They want all of these things, but that's what you have to do. And Stanford right now is at a deficit, right? Because their biggest asset is the campus, and right now no one can visit. So that's a huge problem for them. Sure, but now you have to do the work on the outside. You have to be calling these kids every night. You have to be on Zoom with them. You have to be taking them around in a buggy, showing them the little campus. Even if you're not on campus, you can still get the interviews with Condoleezza Rice. You can still get that one-on-one FaceTime that all these recruits want. Stanford is behind. We've seen it so many times in the past, and right now it's a little bit worrying.
We've talked a lot, offline about how this Stanford football coaching staff, they don't work the hardest on the recruiting trail. And that's just the way that they operate. David Shaw wants to have good work-life balance. I completely respect that, and I think it's something that is a model for his program, and why coaches want to serve under David Shaw is because they know that he's going to respect their lifestyle. That being said, you're exactly right. In this environment where you can't just bring kids to Stanford, show them the campus, get them into school, and then they're set. Like, there's nowhere else they'd want to go. That's not really the case right now because you can't get them on campus. And it's also not really the case right now because Stanford is falling behind in the Pac-12. I mean, from 2010 to 2019, Stanford football was one of the winningest programs in college football for the decade. Then in 2019, you go 4-8. In 2020, don't know how much better they would have done. We'll see what happens if there is a spring season. This is not so much a recruiting program that's fallen off the map. It's a football program that's fallen off the map right now. And they've really lost their identity. And I think when you're talking about a defensive line recruit who's going to Cal over Stanford, something's wrong there. And it shows that this identity of playing in the trenches, of winning in the trenches that Stanford has built up over years, I mean, they've completely lost that. And that doesn't mean that that's the only route that the program can go. You've had some really talented wide receivers and running backs, these skill position players. You've had really talented quarterbacks to get them the ball. And so, yeah, you can lean into that side of your program, but you still got to get those recruits on the line. And right now, if I'm a top offensive line recruit, I don't know if Stanford's where I want to go. And I definitely would have been all over Stanford in the middle of the 2010s, at the beginning of the 2010s. But now, I mean, it's a program that's not running the ball as well or as much and does not seem to emphasize the lines in the same way that they used to.
But if they're not showing it on the field, which we both agree that they're not, then they have to put in the time offline, right? They have to have those phone calls, because Stanford's model for so long, and David Shaw has said this, has been to say, you know what, we're Stanford. You should want to come to us. But that sitting back recruiting style isn't going to work. People don't want to just say, oh, it's Stanford, I'm going to go there for sure if they offer me anymore. That's not how it is. And it's for a lot of reasons, one of which is the fact that their football team isn't performing up to expectations, and there's questions about the coaching staff, there's questions about past recruiting classes, and the questions about how much visibility they're going to get nationally. But there's also questions on the recruiting side. Why can't you do more? Why can't you do the work outside? Sure, coaches should have a lifestyle. They should have work-life balance. But they're also coaches. They're also full-time coaches at Stanford University. Come on, right? Give these kids a phone call. I'm around campus. I see where the coaches live. I don't see them on the phones every day. I want to see them on the phones every day. I want to see them out there. I want to see them showing off. I want to see them on FaceTime. I want them at the Hoover Tower showing me all the views and sights around campus. They're not doing that right now, and it's worrying to me, honestly. You go back to past classes where they were at this point, In 2020, they had 12 recruits committed at this point. In 2018, they had 7. And these are just multiple times. They had much better classes afterwards, and we're not seeing it right now.
You have really high expectations for Miami never to work for you, because that sounds miserable. But at the same time, it's hard to disagree, because we've just seen Stanford go from perhaps the best recruiting program in the Pac-12 and at least third best behind USC and Oregon to a position where, yes, their class was ranked third in the Pac-12 last year, but we don't expect to see that again this year. And we're talking about third in the Pac-12, but outside the top 20 nationally. It's not like that last year's recruiting class was one that was opening eyes across the country. It was very necessary for Stanford to have some positivity after a bad season on the field, to have some positivity on the recruiting trail. But it was a far cry from, say, 2017, where you had a top 15 recruiting class that was, as I've heard described, bangers only. I mean, it was a small class, but it was an unbelievably highly ranked class.
At this point, August 17th, 2016, in that class, they had 1 5-star and 2 4-stars already committed. Stanford right now only has 1 4-star. I mean, you see it right there. And that was even before the early signing period, so that you'd expect them to be even later in the cycle. Come on.
Well, and if you look at 24/7 Sports, no 4 stars, all 3 stars. The highest ranked player is number 346 nationally. That's Ari Patu, going to be a good dual threat quarterback, but honestly, you don't know if he's a guy who's coming in expected to start at any point in his career. You're just trying to shore up your QB room. They're not getting the high-level prospects that you need to compete at a high level in the Pac-12. Pac-12 may get a lot of hate, but it's still a Power 5 conference. You have a program like Oregon that is becoming a growing recruiting power and is doing to Stanford exactly what Stanford once did to Oregon, winning in the trenches, building a program from the lines outward. And I think it's going to be successful in the Pac-12. If I had to buy stock in any Pac-12 program, it's absolutely Oregon. You have USC, who, I mean, particularly once Clay Helton is gone, but maybe even while he's there, they're just going to have built-in advantages recruiting in the LA area, which is just such a hotbed of high school football. Stanford does not have those advantages, but they have so many more that they can play off. And we've said for a long time, if these coaches would commit to recruiting in the same way as their peers not only do, but are forced to at these other Pac-12 institutions, I think we would see much better numbers. And you know what? I said it's not time to panic yet, but give it a couple more months and it might just be, because really Stanford needed a season on the field this year to prove that last year was an anomaly, that last year was the trough, and now we're going to start climbing out. Well, I mean, now you may not get to see Stanford on the field again until the fall of 2021. That's a long time for recruits to have the lasting memory of 4-8.
I completely agree with that. It's scary where they are right now with no ability to show anything else.